Welcome back to starting or improving your own business. Last week's homework assignment was to go ahead and interview 5, 6, possibly even 10 people you consider to be an ideal customer or someone who is close to being an ideal customer. Why did we do that? Well, you're supposed to get their interests, their hobbies, why they spend money on one thing than another, because we're looking to understand what they truly value. We know that value is going to dictate whether or not they're going to purchase a product. At the same time, anytime we're purchasing an asset or a service, we need to make sure we're adding value. And anytime we're purchasing, we have costs. Now, when we deal with costs, we have 3 types of costs that exist. We have direct costs. Direct cost is any cost associated with producing a product or service. If you're a gym owner, you could have direct labor costs for your trainers because you need so many trainers in order to provide service to all your customers. You have direct material costs in your machines and your weights. Now, you also have indirect costs. What are indirect costs? Everything else associated with operating your business. It's your rent, it's your utilities, it's hand sanitizer, it's paper towels, it's toilet paper for the bathrooms, anything essentially that allows for you to operate a functioning business. Now, anytime we're considering direct and indirect costs, we really need to focus on our most important cost, and that's opportunity costs. Opportunity cost is the loss of potential gain from choosing one asset over another. Now, opportunity cost is the most important cost you will have, and yet it is the most overlooked cost by most businesses. Why is that? That's because they didn't spend the time and effort that you did last week finding out what customers truly value. Opportunity costs exist when we purchase assets that don't offer as much value to the customer as another item we could. Whenever we're dealing with a direct product, it's going to be either a item that's going to take up space or cost a certain amount of money. If it's a direct labor, it's going to take up time and money. Now, we know that there's 3 resources that are limited: space, time, and money. Anytime we're purchasing something that is a direct cost, we need to focus on space, time, and money. We need to dig deep into what are the alternatives that exist. We need to have to identify things that are similar in space or similar in cost. When it comes to indirect expenses, it's the same thing. We need to identify what is truly adding value and what is the functionality of either that item or service. And if there is additional services or things that are similar in functionality that may be cheaper. Now, when we're digging into this is where true profitability occurs, because the more flexibility we have in getting assets and getting services, the more negotiating power we have. Whenever you're negotiating as a business, it's different than negotiating as a consumer, because you're looking for a consistent relationship. Anytime you're dealing with an indirect expense, it's usually going to be something that happens on a continual basis. So service they provide is going to be extremely important, even if it's an item that is associated with the business, because certain items you're going to have to go ahead and have serviced or repaired, and you need to make sure that you have that because that is constantly adding value. What you can also do is look to have them provide additional value for the customer. It could be that you have a consulting company as an indirect expense. Now, if that consulting company, say, has a t-shirt machine, you can go ahead and negotiate that you get X amount of t-shirts as part of you purchasing their service. There's a lot of different things you can do there. Now, with my consulting company, this is a place we spend a lot of time because you can truly maximize profitability here. But once again, every single business is different. It's not something I really can dig into with every individual. But there are a few things we can do to have you go ahead and reduce your opportunity cost right away. And that's what we're going to give you for a homework assignment this week. Your homework assignment for this week is going to be to go ahead and look at the items you believe you need to have for running your business, your direct costs. If it's machines, look at the machines and evaluate off of the 3 finite resources you have. So once again, what are those? Space, time, and money. If it's a machine, it's going to do what? It's going to take up space and it's going to cost money. Those are 2 of the 3 limited resources. What we need to do is make sure we have as much flexibility to give us as much negotiating power as possible. In order to do that, I want you to think of 3 alternatives to the functionality of whatever that device is. And when you do that, I want you to think of 3 alternatives in regards to space and 3 alternatives in regards to money. When it comes to indirect costs, I want you to do the same thing. It could be with hand sanitizer that you could have bleach and rags, right? But then you also know, as far as value, if customers want something simpler, something smoother, it may be still that the hand sanitizer is better. But what we need to do there is think about, once again, when it comes to time and money and space available. If getting hand sanitizer is cheaper, but it's coming from China, well, you may not get it in time for it to be useful. Why? Because you have all the backup at the docks, right? A lot of different businesses have been affected because they're not able to get these supplies. You need to look at everything that is occurring and you need to focus on the functionality that those things provide. By doing so, we can think of those 3 alternatives. So you're going to be thinking about 3 alternatives for each asset that you purchase. I want you to think of 2 alternatives for each indirect cost, because it's a lot more complicated once you dig into there when you're dealing with space, time, and money. By doing those things, we'll be able to limit and reduce your opportunity cost. The more we can do that, the easier it is to make you profitable and the easier it is to make you successful. The reason why is once we do this, once we put these costs in place, essentially it becomes set costs. It becomes the number that we have to do in order to become profitable. And that number is used in us determining your point of diminishing returns. The point of diminishing returns is maximum profitability. Literally, producing another item or taking on an additional customer would actually lower your total average profitability. And you want to make sure that you're using the point of diminishing returns to make sure you're maximizing profitability. It really gets into in-depth price theory once we get in there. Once again, that's something more advanced, but we'll touch a little bit on that next week. Go ahead and do your homework, and I'll see you next week.